Well, hey guys, thanks for joining me. Today we are on Lake Norman competing in the first event of the 2023 QCKBF series. Yeah, I don't have anything else to add besides that. Launched at the Ramsey Creek access area. Have pedaled out to my first spot. It is very cold. However, the water temp isn't bad. It's almost 53 degrees, which isn't bad for this time of year. But I got some last minute preparations to do, and then I'm gonna start doing some fishing. Let's get to it. All right. Yes. Not a skunk. All right, guys. Not a skunk. 16.5 inches. 16.5, guys. All right, let's get him back in the water. Right. All right, guys. 13.25. All right. Not even midday, but we got 2 in the boat. 13.25. Gonna get him back in the water. Well, hey guys, almost midday update. Right now I'm sitting on, I've got 2 fish for about 30 inches. I lost one on a drop shot, but those have been my only bites like all day long. And I had a plan. My plan, this was like one of the only events that I've ever done where I've done pre-fishing. And I was out here yesterday and stumbled and fumbled and basically I fished all day, couldn't put together a pattern. And then there at the end of the day, bam, I found it. And that's gonna be the video for next week. So you'll get to see like how I stumbled upon a pattern. My plan for today was I was just going to repeat that. I found 2 areas that were enticing to me, and I was like, well, I'm going to hit those first thing in the morning. Went out there and fished. I wasted about an hour and a half, 2 hours fishing in those areas, and without a bite. I wasn't even marking fish or anything. So I just resorted to junk fishing and just really picking apart docks, which is what I was doing. And now it seems that the dock bite has died. So I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'm not really seeing a whole lot. I'm not real familiar with this ramp, but I just pulled up the map real quickly, and it looks like there's an area offshore that looks good. And I'm not hitting on anything right now anyway, so I figure I'm gonna make a run out there and see what's going on. And if not, basically try to fish offshore, which is not my strength, but figured worst case scenario, get a little bit of practice. So that's what I'm gonna do. All right, 14 3/4. It took me forever to get that fish photographed because the sun was in the way and it kept getting a glare. All right, we're gonna get this little guy back in the water. And now it's time for tackle roundup. All right, guys, what I caught that little fish on was this. Just a drop shot rig. It's a 3/16 ounce bell weight, 2-aught hook, and that is a 6-inch Roboworm in the color Morning Dawn, and it's 6-inch. But I usually bite them down a little bit. I know they sell like 4 inches, like the 4-inch that are like made for drop shots, but like they're basically the same price as the 6-inch, and I'm like, I want to get more inches for my money. So I just buy the regular, the 6-inch, because they're the same price, and then if I need it for drop shot, I just bite it off a little bit. And so that's what I'm using. That's what I caught the little fish on. The fish are actually, the fish that I'm catching, basically I'm not doing anything. I have no pattern, I have no nothing. I'm just picking apart docks is all I'm doing. I'm just doing finesse stuff, picking apart the docks that I come across. And they're in about 6 foot of water. Well, I say every, like I caught a lot, but the 3 fish that I've caught have been in about 6 foot of water, which is kind of surprising because I would expect them to be deeper than they are, but that's what it is. So anyways, that's what we're using. Roboworm Straight Tail on a drop shot. And that concludes today's tackle roundup. Well, hey guys, roughly 1 hour remaining. I say roughly because I'm making another run, and I figured I'd do my 1 hour warning like while I'm running. Still only got 3 fish. I mean, I haven't gotten a bite in a long time. What I was doing, even if I could say it was working, it is definitely not working now. So I'm gonna do what I always do anytime I cannot figure out what's going on. I'm just gonna tie on a jig and drag a jig along and see if something bites, because the jig is a lure that I just don't have a lot of confidence in, and I'm terrible at it. And last year I made a resolution to myself that every time I was on the water I was going to throw a jig for at least a little bit, and I didn't do it. So I'm going to pick that back up this year and make sure I throw the jig at least a little bit, because again, it's like one of the few lures that works year round, and it obviously catches fish for some people, not me, but yeah, so I need to get better at it. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to say I've resigned myself to not finishing out my limit, but it's not looking good. I mean, I'm just not only that, I'm like where I am, I'm just not, the water's so low and everything is out of the water. There's just not a lot of structure and docks and stuff, which is what I'm resigned to doing, is just picking apart docks, but all the docks are out of the water. I mean, there's just no water under them. So yeah, that's where we stand. 1 hour remaining. Let's see if I can make something happen. Oh my God, I got my limit. Holy crap, I got my limit, guys. Yes. 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 All right, guys. 16 1/4 with 18 minutes remaining. Heck yeah. Finished the limit in just the nick of time. Let's get him back in the water. Well, guys, 3:59 and 30 seconds. 30 seconds till line's out, which means I'm done, because even if I caught my monster fish, I would not have time to get it on the board. Well, that wraps up the first event of the QCKBF season out here on Lake Norman. How about that? I was able to put together a last minute limit. Now, my limit isn't very good, but it was, it's not very good, but it was last minute. So there's that. So having a limit, that's helpful, because I was pretty certain that wasn't going to happen. Thoughts? I had a really good time out here. It was a beautiful day. It was a little on the cold side, but not bad. That was cool. Got to meet one of the new QC guys, and this was his first tournament. He had some nerves, and so I did my best to be an ambassador for the club and help him along. And last I saw him out on the water, he had caught 2, so that's good. He didn't skunk, which is awesome. Also, this was one of the, I'm going to give you my lessons learned, because anytime you're on the water, it is an opportunity to learn something new. So this is what I learned in this episode. This is one of the few events that I was able to pre-fish, and next week's episode will be my pre-fishing video where I was practicing. And so I don't really know how to do that, pre-fishing, because I realized that I was like psyching myself out, because I figured out a pattern. It took me a long time, but I figured out a pattern. And so I was like, well, that's what I'm going to commit to. So this morning I committed to my pattern, you know, where I went to the areas that I had identified fish. I knew what they were biting. They weren't on docks, they were on stumps, and that's what you'll see in the next week's video. They were like, sometimes there'd be docks around it, but they were stumps. And there was a couple stump fields that I found, and I was like, well, and every time I drug my worm across the stump, it was right there. In fact, the water was so clear I could stand up and I could see their heads like poking out of the stump. So they were just like, I mean, they were everywhere. There were stumps everywhere. So I came in today with like, all right, I'm gonna hit those stumps. So I beelined it out to the stumps, and I fished for about 2 hours without a bite. And I was like, well, lesson number 1, know when to adapt, because I was fishing, I stayed there too long, and I should have adapted sooner. So that was problem number 1. So I started just junk fishing and really just like picking apart docks after that, and I caught my 2 little fish. and that was just junk fishing and doing some finesse stuff on docks. But then that bite dried up, and I only had the 2 bites. And then here's lesson number 2. Now this is where I really went wrong. I was like, I bet you they're out deep. There was nothing that indicated they were out deep, but I was like, well, what I'm doing right now isn't working, so let me go try something that I'm not good at all in an area that I'm not familiar with, and then try to find fish. So that's where it all went wrong for me, because I pulled up the little Navionics, and I found an area. It was like a nice long, really shallow point, and it dipped off into like really deep water, and I'm like, that'll definitely hold fish. Absolutely, 100%. I've never been more certain of anything in my life. So I started pedaling. I pedaled all the way out there. It was the Dead Sea. I mean, there was nothing. I mean, no bait, no fish, no structure, no nothing. I mean, I was like, well, I spent 30 minutes out here, you know, getting out here and for nothing. So I was like, well, I got to figure out something else. So I pulled up where I was, and I was like, oh, well, there's a couple marinas like just around the corner. Marinas always hold fish. So I pedaled all the way around to the marina, spent about 15-20 minutes fishing the marina, and then remembered I hate fishing marinas. I mean, it was like, yeah, I'm sure there's fish in there, but oh, it's just not my style, and I hate going in between the docks and stuff. It was just, I was miserable doing that. So I was like, well, at this point, I've wasted an hour just in travel time, and I was like, well, I don't want to fish marinas anymore. I'm done with this. I'm over this. So I was like, well, let me go back towards the area where I was fishing before. So I started pedaling back. The long and short of it is, I spent about an hour and a half just moving from spot to spot, which is not my MO. You know, usually I pick a spot and I go with it. You know, I just kind of junk fish, and if I find something that I like, I just kind of hang out. But this one, I was targeting spots, and I spent a lot of time in transit, which is not what I typically do. And so the lesson learned number 2 is know where you're going. There's nothing wrong with making a run, but know where you're going, because that would be very helpful. So that was the lesson that I learned, my lessons that I learned. So hopefully they might help you in your tournament experience. But I'm gonna head back. I think I ended up like about 60 inches or so. I mean, I don't know where that'll put me, but it'll probably be in the fingers crossed in the top half. So that'll be a respectable start. Not a great start, but a respectable start. Anyways, if you'd like to know anything about what I did today, the lures, the launch, or anything else, you can look down in the description box. I'm going to leave some additional information down there. But while you're there, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. The channel that is updated every week with new fishing content and new fishing adventures. So, I'll be seeing you next week. This is Josh, and this is Abide Fishing.